Hi, I'm Abby from RTINGS.com. Today we're reviewing another TV in Hisense's 2024 TV lineup, the Hisense U6N. Throughout the years, the U6 lineup has made a name for itself as an often recommended budget buy for their good performance and low price. But even the savviest deal hunter may wonder what they stand to lose by opting for the cheaper model, and whether this new iteration of the U6 is worth it over last year's U6K. We'll answer all that and more. We bought and tested the Hisense U6N and its 65-inch size. Our results also apply to the 55 and 85-inch models, but not the 75-inch model, as that one uses an ADS Pro panel, so it'll have worse contrast, but a better viewing angle. TVs of a similar name crop up across the globe, like the U6N AU in Australia, but to our international friends we'll give a big old Canadian sorry, as our results are only valid for the North American models. On the Canadian note, the U6N goes by the U68N in Canada. In terms of build, the Hisense U6N is nothing special. It's a budget model, made almost entirely of plastic, so there's quite a bit of flex, especially near the inputs. While it isn't necessarily a major quality control issue, it's worth a note that our unit had a little speck of debris behind the screen. From the back, it looks no different from last year's U6K with the diagonal lines. There's also the VESA mounting points, should you want to wall mount it. If you don't want to wall mount it, it comes with 2 feet, which can be placed in a wide or narrow position. Regardless of what position you use, the feet lift the screen about 3.1 inches from the tabletop, which can easily clear a soundbar. That said, the feet themselves are a bit on the long side, about 12 inches, so you won't get that snug fit with a soundbar tucked under the screen anyway. The U6N offers the budget spread of inputs. 4 HDMI 2.0 ports that cap out at 4K at 60 Hz, though they are capable of higher refresh rates at lower resolutions, which we'll get into later. There are 2 USB 2.0 ports and a composite IN port that requires an adapter you'll have to purchase separately. There's also an ATSC 1.0 tuner for over-the-air content, but it can't do 4K over-the-air. The third HDMI port is also the eARC port, which is capable of passing through all major audio formats like Dolby Digital and DTS, so you can get the most out of your home theater experience. Most of the inputs come out on the left if you're looking at the screen from the front. They aren't too deeply recessed, so they're still fairly accessible if you wall mount the TV. The fourth HDMI port, digital optical audio out port, and LAN port are on the back of the TV, so those will be hard to reach while up against a wall. There's also a microphone switch and a power button located on the bottom of the TV. Like the other Hisenses this year, the U6N uses version 12 of the Google TV interface, allowing you to access popular streaming services by sifting through ads. Fortunately, you can disable some of them. Now, the remote is a little different these days, upgrading from the little plastic remote to the sleek, metallic, premium one. But pretty much all of the buttons are the same. The remote is just bigger and backlit. One thing to note, while you can ask the Google Assistant for most things, you can't ask it to change TV settings, or bring you a snack. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but the real question is how brilliantly bright is this budget buy? It's okay! It peaks at 629 nits in a 25% window. While this is bright enough that highlights stand out in darker scenes, highlights in already bright scenes are less impactful. Fortunately, its HDR brightness remains pretty much the same in game mode. More good news. The contrast on the U6N is fantastic. With local dimming on high, you get nice deep blacks, and they stay deep even if there's a bright highlight on screen. This is all thanks to its full array backlighting, which is pretty nice considering the budget price point of the TV. Now, it only has 240 dimming zones on the 65-inch model, which is more than last year's U6K, but still fewer than the 384 on the U7N. The increased number of dimming zones really does wonders for the TV's contrast. They also do a decent job of limiting the amount of blooming around bright objects on the screen, though subtitles and bright highlights have some blooming around them. Though the TV does struggle with fast-moving objects as there's noticeable haloing and the leading edge of bright-moving objects is noticeably dimmer. In HDR, the TV is decently accurate when it comes to displaying content as the creator intended. Shadows and midtones of content mastered between 600 and 1000 nits are a bit dimmer than intended, and content mastered at 4000 nits has a gradual roll-off to preserve some detail in bright highlights. When it comes to color, this TV is, again, decent overall. It covers most of the DCI-P3 color space with great accuracy, plus a good chunk of the Rec 2020 color space. Though in the Rec 2020 space, saturated colors are undersaturated and mostly inaccurate. In terms of color volume, the TV is limited by its peak brightness, so while it's able to display dark saturated colors well, brighter colors at higher luminance levels are a no-go for sure. But if you aren't aiming for the peaks of high dynamic range, then the U6N will tickle your SDR fancy. It's bright enough to overcome glare in bright rooms and provide a pleasant viewing experience. The ability to stand up to ambient lights in a room is also helped by the TV's semi-gloss coating. It does a decent job of reducing the intensity of indirect reflections, but if you have a lamp or window directly opposite a screen, you will notice it. Now it's time for the bad news. The Hisense U6N makes a terrible dart partner because it's so inaccurate. The pre-calibration accuracy of this TV is bad. Greens are underrepresented while blues and reds are overrepresented. Gamma is close to our 2.2 target, but it's dimmer overall. There are inaccuracies with most colors, which are most noticeable in lighter colors and shades of white. Somehow though, the color temperature is almost spot on to the target of 6500 Kelvin. That changes if you get the TV calibrated. With calibration, the inaccuracies disappear, and the TV looks outstanding. That said, it is a budget model, so if you want to spend the money to get it calibrated, it is worth it, but the combined cost might put you outside of the budget TV range. Another downside, which shouldn't be all that surprising given it's a VA panel, is the viewing angle. There's quite noticeable gamma shifting, color washout, and brightness loss as you move off-center, making this TV unsuitable for wide seating arrangements. Finally, the sound quality on this TV is, well, subpar. The bass is pretty much non-existent, but at least dialogue is clear enough. As you raise the volume level though, the sound gets even more unbalanced. That's kind of a problem, as the TV isn't very loud to begin with. At least there isn't a whole lot of distortion at max volume. Alright, so picture quality, pretty much in line with what we'd expect. Sound quality, yeah, that's also what we'd expect. What about its processing? Well, that depends on what you're watching. We'll start with the good. It can upscale low-quality content well. It keeps details well and clear, though some of the finer details like small text can be hard to make out. Its HDR native gradient handling is satisfactory. Not good, not terrible. There's noticeable banding in darker colors, especially blues, greens, and grays, but otherwise it isn't too noticeable. Unfortunately, it doesn't smooth out low bitrate content very well. It does keep details, but there's big, chunky macro blocking and some noticeable pixelization when streaming low bitrate content. Motion-wise, the response time is excellent. There's a bit of black smearing when transitioning from dark states, but that is to be expected. What is surprising is that the U6N doesn't suffer from the same strange response time behavior as the U7N. Though, when you think about it, it makes sense, as the U6N only supports 4K up to 60 Hz, whereas all that nonsense with the U7N was at refresh rates of 100 Hz or higher. So actually, never mind. On the topic of refresh rates and supported resolutions, the U6N supports all common resolutions up to 4K at 60 Hz. But you can achieve 1080p and 1440p at 120 Hz if you have VRR disabled. 1440p resolutions only work if you have a PC connected to the TV, as you'll have to force the resolution. Otherwise, you're out of luck if you want a higher resolution and refresh rate combo. Regardless of what combo you're using though, you'll have a very responsive gaming experience. Its input lag is incredible, as long as you're in game mode. Outside of game mode, and those inputs will lag. Fortunately, the TV supports auto low latency mode, so it'll just switch automatically to game mode when it detects a console. The U6N supports FreeSync, G-Sync, and HDMI Forum VRR for a tear-free gaming experience. But, as we mentioned, with VRR enabled, you lose out on the higher 120 Hz refresh rate at 1080p or 1440p. This is a bit of a downside if you want to use VRR with any of the current gen consoles, so you'll have to be satisfied with that 60 Hz refresh rate or not use VRR. On the upside, it does support Dolby Vision gaming, so that's nice. Now on to the main question. Should you buy this TV? The short answer is yes. The Hisense U6N offers good performance and picture quality overall, much better than most other TVs at a similar price point. The full array backlighting and local dimming provide fantastic contrast, even if there is a bit of blooming. Though it's inaccurate, it is easy to calibrate, and if you're mainly watching HDR content, then its accuracy is much better out of the box anyway. That said, its limited gaming feature set is a downside. The lack of HDMI 2.1 bandwidth and higher refresh rate support with BRR enabled is a bummer, to say the least. It does somewhat make up for it with its excellent response time and incredible input lag, but for gamers looking for a wider feature set, you'll have to spend a bit more. It's definitely an upgrade from last year's U6K, offering better picture quality and motion handling, plus the U6N extends its coverage of refresh rates by supporting 120Hz at 1080p and 1440p. The U6K, for what it's worth, is at least more accurate out of the box in both HDR and SDR content. So you can save yourself some money by opting for the older model and not getting it calibrated. If you can find it for sale, the U6K is a great budget buy. Of course, then there's the Hisense U7N of it all. Yes, Hisense understands the point of an upgrade, hence why the U7N covers all the bases the U6N misses. It gets brighter, has support for a wider range of resolutions and refresh rates, and includes better gaming features like HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, and you won't have the pixelated chunks of macro blocking and low-quality content either. So if the price increase isn't an issue, and you care about those features, the U7N is worth the upgrade. That's all for our review of the Hisense U6N. If you're interested in learning more, check out the written review on our website. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Abby from Ratings.com, where we help you find the best product for your needs. Okay.
I love how your shirt says, okay, I love that shirt. I love that shirt.
Je suis un pylon.
Could you clap for me, please?